Have you ever wondered why some cartoons from the past feel more like fever dreams than children's entertainment? Imagine bright colors hiding dark undertones. Picture humor so strange that it made parents uneasy and censors furious. These were not simple Saturday morning distractions. They were rebellious experiments from creators who wanted to talk about real human flaws through animation. Today we dive deep into 12 cult cartoons loved for their weirdness and adult storytelling, forgotten by networks, resurrected by midnight reruns, immortalized by fans who crave the strange. Let's begin. Number 12, Fantastic Planet, 1973. When Fantastic Planet first appeared, it stunned audiences with surreal alien landscapes and eerie slow rhythm. The French-Czech collaboration directed by René Laloux was not built for children. It was a political dreamscape about oppression, told through the eyes of miniature humans called Ohms, enslaved by giant blue aliens named Drags. Every frame looked like a moving painting made from strange nightmares and social metaphors. The Drags meditate to evolve, while humans struggle to survive like insects. Its quiet violence and dreamlike design made it feel both hypnotic and terrifying. Critics praised its originality, but many countries labeled it dangerous for its disturbing symbolism. It mirrored the tension of its era, with whispers of colonialism and rebellion. French censors nearly pulled its festival screenings, while in the United States some theaters refused to play it due to audience confusion and fear of its tone. Behind the scenes, the production faced chaos. The animators worked under tight deadlines between two countries divided by language and ideology. Yet their persistence turned the film into one of the most haunting animated parables ever made. Decades later, Fantastic Planet found a second life on late-night television and VHS shelves. It inspired generations of animators from Studio Ghibli to Adult Swim creators. Its message remains chilling. Power always fears imagination. Number 11. Heavy Metal, 1981. Heavy metal blasted into theaters like a rebellious teenage dream made of neon and distortion. It was an anthology film based on stories from the cult magazine of the same name, known for pushing artistic boundaries. Each sequence had a different animation style, creating a hallucinatory roller coaster of science fiction, fantasy, and dark humor. The movie was celebrated for its stunning artwork and killer rock soundtrack, featuring bands like Black Sabbath and Blue Oyster Cult. But what shocked the mainstream was its unapologetic tone. It was too violent, too dark, and too strange for family audiences. The MPAA struggled to rate it, and some theaters refused to show it at all. Behind the curtain production was messy. Multiple studios across continents worked on different segments, causing artistic clashes and wild inconsistencies. Yet somehow, this chaos became part of its legend. Critics dismissed it as immature at first, but underground audiences made it a cult classic. Home video distribution became a nightmare due to music rights battles. For nearly 2 decades, the film vanished from circulation. When it finally resurfaced in the late 90s, fans treated it like a lost artifact. Today, Heavy Metal is remembered as the film that proved animation could be raw, rebellious, and deeply human in its weirdness. Its legacy lives in everything from cyberpunk aesthetics to MTV's liquid television. It shouted one truth across generations: art does not need permission to be strange. Number 10. The Maxx, 1995. The Maxx aired on MTV's odd late-night block, where reality blurred with nightmare. Based on Sam Keith's comic, it told the story of a homeless man who believes he is a superhero, protecting a woman named Julie Winters from a shadowy world called the Outback. What made it unforgettable was how it refused to explain itself. Viewers were dropped into a fractured mindscape where trauma, fantasy, and humor collided. Each episode moved like poetry disguised as madness. The show explored themes of identity, mental health, and the fragile barrier between imagination and pain. Censors did not know what to do with it. It was too intelligent for network cartoons, yet too visually dark for mainstream audiences. Executives worried that its surreal pacing and psychological tone would confuse viewers. Despite that, it built a small but fiercely loyal fan base who watched it religiously on MTV's Oddities block. Behind the scenes, the creative team struggled with limited animation budgets and constant pressure to simplify the story. Sam Keith refused. He wanted it to remain fragmented, haunting, and true to his vision. The result was a masterpiece that burned too bright to last. When it ended after only 13 episodes, fans were devastated. But years later, critics re-examined it as one of the boldest experiments in televised animation. It dared to show that the mind itself could be the ultimate battleground. The Maxx did not vanish. It simply retreated to the outback, waiting for those brave enough to find it again. Number 9. Aeon Flux, 1991. When Aeon Flux hit MTV's liquid television in the early 90s, it felt like something from another dimension. Each episode was a riddle filled with impossible architecture, silent action sequences, and characters who almost never spoke. Created by Peter Chung, it was not just animation. It was philosophy wrapped in surreal violence and dream logic. Aeon Flux followed a deadly secret agent from a dystopian city who fought impossible battles, yet died at the end of nearly every short episode. There was no clear hero, no moral compass, and no continuity. Viewers had to piece together meaning from the fragments. Its atmosphere was sensual, sterile, and strangely human all at once. Critics were puzzled. Fans were hypnotized. MTV's younger audiences did not know what they were watching, but they knew it felt important. It was the opposite of everything Saturday morning cartoons had taught them. There were no jokes, no lessons, just raw mood and mystery. Behind the scenes, Peter Chung fought constantly with executives who wanted to make the series more conventional. He resisted every attempt to simplify it. His characters moved with strange angular motions, and the camera angles mimicked European art cinema rather than American animation. The result was unsettling but unforgettable. Censors worried about its tone, calling it too violent and too alienating. Some stations even refused to air reruns during daytime slots. Despite that, Aeon Flux became a cult obsession passed through VHS tapes among college students and late-night artists. Its influence would later shape everything from Ghost in the Shell to The Matrix. Even the live-action movie adaptation in the 2000s could not capture its surreal energy. What made Aeon Flux so timeless was its refusal to explain itself. It proved that confusion could be beautiful, and that animation could question reality itself. Aeon Flux was not just a show, it was an awakening for anyone brave enough to decode it. Number 8. Ralph Bakshi's Wizards, 1977. Long before fantasy epics filled the big screen, Ralph Bakshi gave the world wizards a bizarre fusion of fairy tale and apocalypse. The film looked like a children's cartoon, but spoke like a grim political allegory about power propaganda and the rebirth of evil. It told the story of two wizard brothers, one pure and one corrupted, who fought for control of a ravaged post-nuclear Earth. Bakshi had already gained a reputation for breaking every rule in animation. After Fritz the Cat and Heavy Traffic, he wanted to make something personal, something mythic. Wizards became that outlet. With its hand-painted backdrops and rotoscoped battles, it looked handmade, raw, and emotional. But controversy arrived fast. The film's depiction of fascist imagery shocked audiences. Posters and scenes showed clear parallels to World War II propaganda, using real archival footage of soldiers and dictators to make its point. Some theaters pulled it, fearing public outrage, while conservative critics attacked Bakshi for using war symbols in animation. Behind the scenes, Bakshi's studio was running out of money. He had to fire animators mid-production and reuse old footage from abandoned projects just to finish. Yet, that desperation became part of its style. The rough edges made it feel authentic, like an artifact from another timeline. When Wizards finally premiered it, divided critics but found a cult following among fantasy fans who saw it as a bridge between fairy tales and adult storytelling. It became a cornerstone of underground animation, inspiring artists to take risks with tone and imagery. Decades later, its legacy remains powerful. In a world flooded with polished visuals, Wizards reminds us that imperfection can hold deeper truth. Ralph Bakshi proved that fantasy can be strange, political, and deeply human all at once. His weird vision changed how the world looked at animation forever. Number 7. Liquid Television, 1991. Before Adult Swim, before streaming Weirdness, there was Liquid Television. It was MTV's wild experiment, a show made of short animated pieces stitched together like a dream that never repeated itself. No rules, no consistency, just chaos turned into art. Launched in the early 90s, it gave young animators total creative freedom. What emerged were strange worlds filled with dark humor, abstract animation, and experimental storytelling. It introduced the world to characters like Beavis and Butt-Head and Aeon Flux, while also featuring dozens of one-off shorts that defied logic and taste. Critics called it the punk rock of animation. Each episode was unpredictable, sometimes hilarious, sometimes disturbing, always unforgettable. The show had no host, no explanation, just a flashing logo between segments. It was the kind of television you stumbled upon late at night and could not believe was real. Behind the scenes, MTV executives were terrified. The content was unpredictable and often pushed against broadcast standards. Some episodes were pulled after a single airing due to graphic imagery or political satire. Animators were called, having segments censored minutes before broadcast. Still, they kept pushing. The chaos was the point. Audiences loved its freedom. Artists like Mike Judge and Peter Chung used it as a testing ground for ideas that would later become mainstream phenomena. Without liquid television, there might never have been shows like Daria or Ren and Stimpy. Eventually, corporate pressure ended it. The network wanted safer, profitable content. Liquid television was too dangerous, too smart, and too weird. When it disappeared, fans treated it like a lost relic. But its DNA lives on in every adult animated show that dares to be experimental. Liquid television proved that animation was not bound by age or structure. It was rebellion broadcast straight into living rooms. It was not made to comfort. It was made to awaken. Number 6. The Head, 1994. When MTV launched The Head, it felt like a cartoon born out of fever and caffeine. It followed an ordinary man named Jim, who suddenly woke up with a massive purple head. Inside that swollen head lived a tiny alien named Roy, who claimed he was here to save humanity. From that wild premise came one of the strangest and most thought-provoking animated series of the decade. The Head was a mix of dark humor, horror, and science fiction, all wrapped in crude hand-drawn animation that looked intentionally uncomfortable. The show refused to fit into any box. It was too smart for stoners, too bizarre for kids, and too grotesque for networks. Every episode explored themes of paranoia, government surveillance, and identity in a world that never stopped mutating. MTV's executives initially saw it as another late-night experiment for their oddities lineup, but they quickly realized how weird it truly was. Early test audiences did not know how to react. Was it comedy or tragedy? Was it about aliens or mental illness? Nobody could tell, and that confusion became part of its charm. Behind the scenes, creator Eric Fogel faced constant battles with censors who wanted to tone down its grotesque visuals and absurd violence. He pushed back hard, keeping the animation gritty and the story unpredictable. Production was rushed and budgets were tight, yet every frame dripped with surreal creativity. When it aired in 1994, it developed a cult following almost immediately. Fans traded VHS recordings and quoted its cryptic dialogue in online forums long before memes existed. Critics called it ugly genius and brave. But the network could not sustain it. The show ended abruptly, leaving unanswered questions and frustrated fans. Years later, The Head is remembered as a rare cartoon that dared to mix sci-fi paranoia with emotional sincerity. It captured the alienation of its era in a way no live-action show could. In its weird, swollen head lived a reflection of humanity's biggest fear, not invasion, but transformation. Number 5. Rock and Rule, 1983. Rock and Rule was Canada's bold attempt to create an adult animated rock opera that could rival Hollywood's animation giants. Produced by Nelvana Studios, it told the story of a dystopian future where mutated animals replaced humans and music had the power to summon forces of destruction. It was ambitious, risky, and ultimately too strange for the mainstream. The film followed Angel and Omar, two rock musicians who find themselves caught in the schemes of Mock, a sinister superstar trying to use Angel's voice to awaken an ancient evil. The world they lived in was filled with neon light factories, smoke, and decay. It was both a tribute to rock culture and a warning about ego and power. Production was chaos. The studio went nearly bankrupt trying to complete it. Animators worked around the clock, often sleeping under their desks. voices for the main characters were redubbed multiple times as producers fought over whether the film should be edgy or family-friendly. At one point, the American distributor cut entire sequences fearing it would confuse audiences. When it was released, it bombed at the box office. The marketing was mishandled and theaters barely knew how to promote it. But underground fans quickly discovered it on late-night TV and bootleg tapes. They were captivated by its stunning animation and its haunting soundtrack featuring Iggy Pop, Lou Reed, and Debbie Harry. For decades, Rock and Roll lived as a lost legend whispered about by fans who felt it was too ahead of its time. Now, it is celebrated as a masterpiece of animation that proved you could fuse rock music and apocalyptic fantasy into one surreal vision. Its failure became its freedom. Its weirdness became its legacy. Number 4. Ren and Stimpy, 1991. When Ren and Stimpy first aired on Nickelodeon, it looked like a standard cartoon about a chihuahua and a dim-witted cat. But within minutes, viewers realized this was something else entirely. It was manic grotesque and relentlessly unpredictable. Kids laughed, parents panicked, censors scrambled. Created by John Kricfalusi, it was a blend of slapstick surrealism and madness that broke every rule of Saturday morning television. The art style was both beautiful and disturbing, with hyper-detailed close-ups that made viewers squirm. Every episode balanced absurd comedy with bursts of discomfort, turning animation into something raw and unfiltered. Behind the laughter, there was turmoil. Kricfalusi's perfectionism clashed with Nickelodeon executives who wanted to tone down its darker humor. Production schedules fell apart as the creator pushed animators to extremes, demanding rewrites and redraws until the studio revolted. The tension became so intense that Kricfalusi was eventually fired mid-season. But controversy only made the show more famous. Fans adored its rebellion. Critics praised its artistry while denouncing its chaos. Parents' groups tried to ban it, claiming it was corrupting children. The network edited episodes heavily, or pulled them entirely from reruns. Yet, through all that turmoil, Ren and Stimpy redefined American animation. It paved the way for adult-oriented cartoons like Beavis and Butt-Head and South Park. It proved that animation could be loud, grotesque, and emotionally complex all at once. Even today, its influence can be felt in modern cartoons that embrace absurdity as a form of truth. Ren and Stimpy was never just about a cat and a dog. It was about freedom in art and the beauty that hides within madness. Number 3. Fritz the Cat, 1972. When Fritz the Cat exploded onto screens in the early 70s, it shattered every assumption people had about animation. Directed by Ralph Bakshi and based on Robert Crumb's Underground comic, it was the first animated film to ever receive an X rating. That alone made it infamous. But what truly defined it was its unfiltered look at a chaotic America disguised as a cartoon about a talking cat. Fritz was a rebellious college student wandering through a world of jazz bars, riots, and self-destruction. He was a mirror for the counterculture of the time, naive, desperate, and constantly searching for meaning in a collapsing society. The animation style was crude, raw, and alive, filled with energy that felt closer to street art than Disney Polish. Critics called it shocking, vulgar, brilliant, and revolutionary all at once. Censors wanted it banned. Some theaters refused to show it. Religious groups protested its release, calling it dangerous to morals. But audiences were curious. It made more than $90 million worldwide, turning a low-budget underground project into a global phenomenon. Behind the scenes, chaos reigned. Ralph Bakshi fought constantly with producer Steve Krantz over money and creative control. The film's success led to lawsuits from Robert Crumb, who disowned it completely. Bakshi, however, stood by his vision, claiming it was not just about animals behaving badly, it was about America eating itself alive. Fritz the Cat broke barriers and burned bridges. It opened doors for adult animation, but also scared studios away from following in its footsteps for years. Its legacy still echoes in modern animation that dares to mix humor with social commentary. Fritz the Cat proved that even a cartoon could hold up a mirror to the darkest corners of humanity. It was the cartoon that dared to grow up before the world was ready. Number 2. Beavis and Butt-Head, 1993. When Beavis and Butt-Head premiered on MTV, it became an instant cultural earthquake. two slackers sitting on a couch mocking music videos and causing chaos around town. Simple, right? But beneath the stupidity, there was something genius, a satire so sharp it cut through the heart of American pop culture. Created by Mike Judge, the show captured a generation lost between boredom and media overload. It was hilarious, yes, but it was also brutally honest about youth culture, consumerism, and the emptiness of television itself. The animation was intentionally crude, the humor awkwardly timed, the pacing strange. That roughness made it real. Parents hated it. Teachers despised it. Politicians blamed it for corrupting the youth. Censorship battles exploded when news outlets falsely linked the show to real-life tragedies. MTV pulled several episodes and forced massive edits, but controversy only made it more famous. Teens saw it as rebellion made flesh, a voice that mocked the world's hypocrisy. Behind the laughter, Mike Judge kept control of his creation even as executives panicked. He fought to keep its satire intact, balancing stupidity and brilliance with razor precision. What looked like nonsense was actually a masterclass in social commentary hidden beneath fart jokes and chaos. The legacy of Beavis and Butt-Head cannot be overstated. It birthed MTV animation, paved the way for adult cartoons like South Park and The Simpsons revival, and even inspired a revival decades later. It proved that smart ideas could hide inside dumb laughter, and that sometimes the most idiotic characters tell the deepest truths. Beavis and Butt-Head were not heroes. They were reflections of a distracted nation staring into the TV void, and somehow we saw ourselves staring back. Number 1. The Simpsons, 1989. Before The Simpsons, television animation was considered dead. No network believed an animated sitcom could survive in prime time. But then came a yellow family from a fictional town called Springfield. They were loud, flawed, loving, and painfully real. What started as a short segment on The Tracy Ullman Show became the most influential cartoon in history. Created by Matt Groening, The Simpsons blended satire with heart, exposing the absurdity of suburban life while celebrating it at the same time. Homer's laziness, Marge's patience, Bart's rebellion, Lisa's intelligence, and Maggie's silence became universal symbols of family imperfection. The first few seasons felt raw and rebellious. They mocked consumerism, politics, religion, and even television itself. But with that boldness came outrage. Religious groups called it immoral, politicians condemned it as anti-family, and school boards tried to ban Bart Simpson merchandise. One president even said America needed to be less like The Simpsons. Behind the laughter, there were battles. Writers and animators fought with Fox executives over creative freedom and content restrictions. Production delays became legendary as the team obsessed over every frame and joke. But that perfectionism paid off. The Simpsons became more than entertainment. It became a cultural document recording the hopes and failures of modern life. Every line, every visual gag, every satirical jab helped define the language of television comedy. Over 3 decades later, its influence is everywhere. From Family Guy to South Park to BoJack Horseman, every adult cartoon owes it a debt. What began as a cartoon about a small-town family became the longest-running reflection of human absurdity. The Simpsons taught the world that animation could be both smart and emotional, rebellious and sincere. It was never just a show. It was a revolution painted yellow. These 12 cult cartoons were never meant to fit in. They broke rules, ignored trends, and shattered expectations. Each dared to be strange, to challenge the system, and to reveal truth through chaos. Which of these weird animated worlds would you revisit if you could step inside again? Share your thoughts below hit. Like if you love forgotten animation, and subscribe for more deep dives into the strangest stories ever drawn.